So in this video, I have something actually very interesting for you guys, a little bit different from what I traditionally do. In this video, I'm going to be giving you a segment of the podcast that I did with John Lovell over at the Warrior Poet Society. This was a really interesting discussion that I had with him over on my podcast channel. A lot of people aren't aware that I have a podcast channel. I will link it down below. Please go subscribe to that as well. And you will get longer form content, longer form discussion on the Second Amendment, and also just interviews like this that I did with John Lovell. In this segment, we're talking about specific types of firearms, the importance of doing training over just buying a bunch of gear. And then also he talks about, I believe at the end, his new book that he has coming out. So I will also link that down below where you can pre-order that. I think it would be awesome for our community to also support him over there, pre-order his book. I already pre-ordered his book on my own. I already pre-ordered and bought it myself. So again, just take a look at that. And I really hope that you guys enjoy this interview. Let me know down in the comment section if you guys want more of this. And if you want the full discussion that I had with John Lovell, again, that's over on the podcast channel, which I will link down below.
As a pro trainer, I was really doing night vision tactics for small units. And so that was fun, low light stuff, room clearing stuff. And then I branched into pistol and rifle, but it's always centered around fighting, not competition, which I like competition and give thumbs up because I've leaned on some competition guys and, you know, shred some milliseconds off here and there and tightened up some groups who love the competitive guys, but really I'm more interested in making better protectors. Now, I think most folks, even when I say that, who haven't really walked through the fires and done a good bit of training, don't really understand what I'm talking about. And the best way I could kind of pop the bubble is to say the only real way to get good at gunfighting is to gunfight. That's it, period. So that means all of the time we spend playing with guns and shooting paper on the range, all of it, it's kind of like hitting a heavy bag. It's good for you. It helps build some speed and some strength and whatnot, but it will not, it's no substitute for sparring. Really, it's supposed to get you ready for sparring. And once you're sparring, you never look at a heavy bag the same. It's just a tool. That's a stupid tool. So is the flat range. Really good as a tool, but as soon as you fight in simulated, force on force encounters, which we do in like our Pistol 3 or our one-man room clearing class, all of a sudden light bulbs go on in young students' minds, and then they'll never look at the flat range the same way again. They'll see it for what it is. Before, the flat range was this technicolored, it was the big show, and they're simulating gunfights against paper targets and steel, and that's all well and good. I don't mean to pull that down. What I mean to do is keep it in its proper place and exalt training simulations even above it, where an instructor can run you through scenarios. I can have students shoot each other. And when that happens, they actually start to grow in the flat range, which was all the rage before, goes from technicolor to drab gray. It's just a tool. So that's what we show on our training classes over on WPSN, our app. And it's what students will see face-to-face, intimately and viscerally in our training classes in person.
Yeah, and there's a few interesting jumping off points from there. But one of the questions that I want to ask you, and I ask a lot of guys who do quite a bit of training, you teach training, in our community, if you want to call the Second Amendment gun community a community, which, that has connotations within itself because everybody has different perspectives. Do you feel like there is too much of an emphasis on gear, equipment, buying the newest, Gucciest thing that Daniel Defense or Geisley or whoever releases over buying ammunition, training, and even just doing flat range stuff, not even going to do training or simunition related stuff? What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, gear is important, but it's one of the least important out of all the kind of the big pillars of fitness and understanding tactical nuance and skills and mindset. Then there's gear. And out of these five, gear is by far the least important. However, it still is important. So I don't want to just say, hey, have crummy, awful gear and train a bunch. I'm like, no, some good gear can definitely move some little hills. It just doesn't move mountains. So if you were a really crummy shooter, to put it in a way that everyone understands. And you buy an awesome gun, it may like a Band-Aid cover over a little bit of the fact that you suck, but you're still a sucky shooter with a really expensive gun. Yeah. I'm like, I could have made you better in 5 minutes of training than your $5,000 gun could have done. And so training, there's no substitute for good training. You can't buy your way out. Mm-hmm. So
what would you say to someone like, and I even feel guilty. So I just have a new rifle right over here. I just bought another Daniel Defense upper and just built something. But, you know, I have, you know, you're in the YouTube space, the gun space, and you train and you do all that stuff. You know, we have a little bit of a luxury of always getting to purchase and have the newest and greatest stuff, really, because it's part of our work. It's a little bit, I feel like sometimes it's a little bit different because it's part of our business.
Right.
But what would you say to the average person who maybe has a good setup? Where would you say, or what should they do to kind of make that first jumping off from just being a gun owner, maybe only going to the range? You know, some people, I hear that, you know, they go like twice a year. You know, how do they start to progressively invest in training and then eventually maybe go do like one of your courses and then escalate to doing force on force simunitions? Like, how would you talk to someone like that?
Yeah, so I'm a man that's all about balance. And so you already kind of led me into it, which I appreciate, is to soberly look at your situation. I was a former special operations guy who now works in the gun industry for a living. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have some really pricey, ridiculous gun builds. But hey, I also have a good bit of budget stuff as well that I like. And then I've got everything in between. And so if you and your new bride of 6 months with a baby on the way, you want to be a good protector, but you're dead broke and man, you're paycheck to paycheck, don't you dare buy that expensive Daniel Defense gun, which, by the way, that's hard for me to say. It's like the words come out forcibly because I love Daniel Defense. Yeah. You know, you brought it up. I'm like, I got a whole bunch of Daniel Defense right here. Yeah. I like it a lot, but man, I remember some times in my life where my wife and I, we were just so broke. It would have been terrible stewardship for me to take the limited funds we had and invest them in my cool guy guns. And so I'm like, nope, I had very, very little many years ago. And so I want your marriage to be strong. I want you to be financially as you know, free as much as that's relatively reasonable for your season. Hey, if you're, you know, bringing in the big bucks and you're like a 55-year-old lawyer with your name on the side of a building, get the cool stuff, man. Do whatever you want, you know, but I would say, guys, beware keeping up with the tactical Joneses. It's fool's gold. Training moves the needle more than the cool gun.
But I guess the one thing I want to do just to close this out is, you know, ask you what you got going on. What is the Warrior Poet Society have going forward? You know, what is your goal going forward? What should people look for from you guys?
Big news, and I haven't talked about it. Like, I think this will be my first kind of public announcement outside of our own email list, is of like, we got a book, Warrior Poet Way. So there she is in all her glory. And so I've been working on this book for years. It's available for pre-order right now. But again, man, I poured a lot of sweat. I guess I don't really sweat writing a book. That's not true. But like typing so hard, I was
on the treadmill and I was sweating as I was typing.
You're either typing too hard or you don't work out a lot, John. So no, of like years in the making, and I've really crystallized our ethos. I put the most important lessons for living well, or living free and dying well. And so some biographical stuff of whether it's war stories or very intimate kind of, you know, poetry I've written. I haven't aired a lot of that, but it's actually it's a book that people who don't like reading would even enjoy. And it speaks to goodness, not greatness, mastering fear, raising sons, learning to dance. That's a metaphor. But anyway, a lot of folks that I admire said really nice things about the book. And so I think it's a good thing, but it launches July 11th and it's available right now for pre-order wherever books are sold.